This is Michelle Hughes from Ageless and Timeless. Today's podcast is brought to you by Water and Wellness. Recently, I had the opportunity to visit Water and Wellness at their offices, and I can tell you that as far as you and I are concerned and our health is concerned, this is one of the most important places that you can go to find water that is purified and products that will help your longevity and your overall health. Visit waterandwellness.com to learn how you can take control of your drinking water and learn about those natural additives to optimize your health and longevity. Contact Stacy at 877-296-6880. Use the Ageless code and you'll get a 20% discount on all your products.
My love for you is immeasurable. My respect for you immense. You're ageless, timeless, lace and fineness, your beauty and elegance.
Good morning, everybody. This is Michelle Hughes from Ageless and Timeless. 2 weeks ago, we had a guest, Dr. Chris Shade, and he's graciously agreed to come back because we are covering the COVID-19 crisis and our health and how we can take care of ourselves, protect ourselves during this very vulnerable time in our lives. So Dr. Shade, welcome back, and thank you so much for part two.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm happy to be here and talk some more about how to keep yourself up to optimum wellness.
Well, we started last time by looking at the series of steps that we need to take. And we talked about detoxification, immunity, stress, sleep, hormones, intermittent fasting, all the elements, the building blocks of good health. We only were able to cover in that one, and we kind of skipped over detox and went to immunity first. But I think today we should start at the beginning and talk about detox first, because if without detoxing our bodies, what good is doing all the other elements that are so important, but really would be far more efficacious if they were being done with a body that's been purified by the steps that you're going to describe. So could you start us off by telling us how to best detoxify our body without having to go through chelation for heavy metals? I know that's one of your specialties, is mercury toxicity. So why don't you break down toxicity for us and how to best detox?
Yeah, and sort of how that overlaps into immunity. And so when we talked last time, we were talking more about like, okay, there's an immune crisis right now. What do we load up on to get our immune system up as best we can? Prop it up, give it some strength. But long-term depth of immune response really needs a clean slate to work from. As an example, I remember when I first got all of my dental amalgams out and then developed our detoxification system, the first thing I noticed is that I used to get sick every time my kids got sick. And every time I go on a longer trip, go to some conferences, lecture a lot, I'd come back and I would be run down and I would get sick. I just would crash all the time. And when I got that metal out of my body, I no longer saw that. In fact, I came up to a level of resilience on an immune level and also on an energy level. So adrenals, thyroid, all had the ability to, put energy into the game all the time. So one of the ways that is happening is through the glutathione system. And so when we talk about detoxification, we'll refer a lot to glutathione and the glutathione system. By the glutathione system, I mean not just glutathione, and we'll describe what that is, but the enzymes that bring it into action in different compartments in the body, and the transport system that's using glutathione to move toxins out of the body. Now, glutathione is essential there, but it's also essential to your immune system. And so when you have a constant onslaught of toxins, you're depleting the available resources of glutathione, the available level of glutathione, and you're creating this constant backdrop of your body fighting against damage that's coming from the toxins. So yeah, glutathione is used to move toxins out, but it's also used to quench the free radicals that can come from a high level toxic load. So toxic load is creating oxidative stress, and that's using up your glutathione. So glutathione becomes central, one, to our immune system and to our detox. So let's talk now about detoxification. All right, so detoxification is a series of reactions that will take a toxin, say it's inside a cell, will link something onto it, such as glutathione. Now, there's three main molecules that you make in your body and link onto toxins. One's called glutathione, one's called glucuronic acid, and one's called sulfate. And depending on the toxin, you're going to choose one of those. You're going to link it onto that toxin. And that toxin, or that linkage, is going to make the toxin water soluble, and it's going to make it transportable by a series of transporters that are going to recognize it. It's going to recognize the charge and shape of it and start moving it in a relay race out of the body. And that relay is going from inside the cell to outside of it. And once it gets out of the cell, it's going to move into the blood. It's going to be circulating through the blood. It's going to go from the blood into the liver, from the liver out into the bile, and then out through excretion. Or it's going to go from the blood into the kidneys and then into the urine. Or it can go out through the skin or directly through the GI tract. And the biggest one of these movements is through the liver. All right, so to review that, to get a toxin out of the cell, say we're talking about a metal like mercury, you need glutathione. You need an enzyme that links those together. It's called a phase 2 enzyme, or a transferase. In the case of glutathione, that's glutathione S transferase. Makes this conjugate. Now you need to get it out of the cell. Now, on the membrane of the cell is a transporter that actively pumps that toxin out of the cell. So you need the glutathione, you need the transferase, and then you need the transporter to move it out of the cell. Then when it goes into the blood, it's going to see another transporter at the liver that transports it into the liver cell. And then another transporter that dumps it with the bile into the bile flow and into the GI tract. If it was going through the kidney, the same transporters are actually there. One that pulls it from the blood into the kidney cell, then one that dumps it into the urinary flow. So you need to have all those things working together. And the most important set of flows is the flow through the liver. And that especially being the flow from the liver cell into what are called the bile canaliculi. They're little rootlets of the total tree that becomes the bile tree. So every one of your liver cells is fed on one side by blood and drained on the other side by bile. And we think of bile as that green liquid that comes out of the liver, accumulates in the gallbladder, and then when you eat, it's injected into meat with the food that's coming out of the stomach. And in that digestive respect, it's there for emulsifying fats, and it's there for digestion to bring fats into the body. But it's also carrying those toxins out. And that's the most common level at which detoxification gets blocked, is that movement through the liver. And the things that block that are inflammatory states, and that can be inflammatory states coming from a bad GI tract. So that'll reflect back on taking care of your diet and your digestion. But just stress itself can block that. Getting stuck into fight or flight activity locks up your gallbladder, because then if you're in fight or flight, that means you're not in the opposite, which is rest digest. With rest and digest is repair, regenerate, detoxify. So if you don't need to, if you're in fight or flight, you're not going to put energy into eating, and so you lock up your liver because you're not going to move bile out, you're not going to detoxify, you're not going to do any of those. So anything that's putting us in stress is blocking that. And one of the things that does that is hormones, especially estrogen excess when we're estrogen dominant. So that's sort of an overview of the whole thing, and then I'll let you pop in with any questions, and then we can go into how do we support it at each step along the game.
Well, what you just said is just a reinforcement of what a miracle the body is, and how we have to, it's like a fine-tuned machine that we have to respect each process and how they all interrelate. So everything is so finite from the way you just described it, that to have it working like a fine-tuned machine is a true challenge, right? It is part of being human, but it's also part of our knowledge and awareness of how to best optimize our human miracle called the body. So I think if we first start with the very basic is, glutathione. Why don't you define glutathione for our viewers? Because a lot of people have never heard of glutathione, which is, we know, you and I know, that this is like one of the master, probably the master, is it an enzyme or a hormone? How do you?
No, it's neither. It's a molecule that functions as it's a tripeptide. So it's made out of 3 amino acids: glutamate, glycine, and cysteine. And the cysteine has a sulfur group on it that's very electron rich. And that can be used to quench free radical activity. So it's used as an antioxidant. Anything that's electron rich can be an antioxidant. Mm-hmm. But it's also used to link onto these toxins and pull them out. And then it's also used by your immune system. One is to keep the balance. So we're talking about, the miracle of life. What are the things that go into keeping that innate balance? So when glutathione levels are high, the immune system keeps the right balance between inflammation and anti-inflammation. So this is a big thing. As you see, people getting sick in COVID, they don't have the balance right between inflammation and anti-inflammation. And there's several things that keep that balance, but one of them is glutathione. And it is also used by white blood cells to turn into something called nitrosoglutathione. It's mixed with nitric oxide, and that's used as a direct antimicrobial. All right. So,
Chris, excuse me for interrupting, but one of the things that I remembered reading is that glutathione is probably one of the most difficult molecules to be absorbed by the body. My naturopathic doctor said never ever take it as a supplement unless maybe you could take N-acetylcysteine, which is a precursor, as you just mentioned, to glutathione. However, glutathione directly, the best way that he described was to do it intravenously with an IV. I do know that you at Quicksilver Scientific have a nanotechnology liposomal formula that you can take under the tongue. Why don't you take a moment and just tell us about that formula, because that's how I'm now taking glutathione from my own personal use, because to go get an IV, you have to go to a doctor's office, you have to sit there for a couple of hours. I mean, it's probably a good idea if you're very sick. But if you're healthy and you're just trying to stay healthy, I think the more convenient is what Quicksilver Scientific has developed. So could you take a moment and just tell us why that works, the liposomal formula, and why we should do that versus, having to run to a doctor's office?
Right. So we see that glutathione does all these magical things for us, and it also keeps our telomeres long. It helps with gene regulation and cellular growing your cells. And so we want it in there, but how do we get it in? So if we eat it in a capsule, we break it down in the stomach and we just get the native amino acids. N-acetylcysteine is a precursor amino acid that can be used, and it's helpful. But a lot of times when you're already sick or very toxic, your enzymes for synthesizing glutathione are very weak. So you want glutathione in directly. And so you could go for the IV, and that flushes a whole bunch in, but it's not really able to incorporate into the body very well, and you'll flush it out pretty quick. So you need this day-to-day building of the glutathione. Now, the liposomes and nanoemulsions are two lipid nanoparticle techniques for delivering compounds into the body. And when you make these right, you're making really, really small replicas of cells, really. You're using phosphatidylcholine, which cells are made out of, the cell membranes are made out of, and you're making them, a millionth of the size of a cell. And these are measured in nanometers. They're less than 100 nanometers. That's why they're called nanoparticles. And these passively absorb right through the oral membranes, right into the capillaries and right into circulation in the body. And you're able to cheat the normal absorption routes and do this. Now, to get this right, you need to get all these liposomes in the right size. You need the right arrangement of water and ethanol and glycerin in the formulation, or else the glutathione is going to break down. But we've showed that we're able to get them into the body. We have a very high bioavailability. There are other companies that make liposomes out there, but nobody's really mastered the technology to show the absorption. And we demonstrated this in comparisons to a number of different products. So this delivery system is able to get things into the blood in as little as a couple of minutes. In the studies that we've done with B12 and with CBD, in as little as 2 minutes, we can see the levels in the blood elevating. So this is the way that we are able to get it into the system. And we see the elevation last a lot longer than an IV. An IV will go up and go down really quick. But because of the structure of the liposomes, because they're made out of the same thing the cell membranes are made out of, they're able to integrate into the membranes of the cells and get high delivery of those compounds in with and perpetuate that longevity of the compound in the body. So that's the way that we're getting glutathione into the body.
Okay, so once we have the glutathione, how long does it take for the normal healthy person, not a person who's ill, but how long does it take for glutathione to be built up, if particularly when you're starting out and you're wanting to, basically build your strength, your wellness, your immunity, and of course by starting with this detox. So what is the time frame?
Well, even on your first dose, you get glutathione into the body. Now, building up your background, that's going to be 2-3 weeks. You're going to build this stability in the system, but you can go into a detox and you can start detoxifying right away. And what we do is we take the glutathione, but we also take things to open up the liver flow and get the bile flowing at the same time that the glutathione is helping with the detoxification. And in fact, we'll go through, like in the cell, we said we need the glutathione, we need the transferases, and we need the transport, and then we need the liver transport conjugated to that. So we're going to do all that at the same time. We're going to take liposomes for glutathione, liposomes to turn up the cellular transferases, and liposomes that turn up the transporters all at once. And that's going to get things out of the cell, down to the liver, and out into the bile very rapidly. And then we're going to come in with what's called a toxin binder in the GI tract and catch all of that. Now, because I said it takes a couple of weeks to really build up the system, we're going to do what's called a titrating of dose. We're going to start at a lower dose, and over weeks, we're going to move you up to higher doses. So in the beginning, on day one, you can start moving toxins out. But as you go through building up the reserves in the system of glutathione and other detoxification elements, you're going to move up the doses, and you're going to be able to move more out with each week that you're on these programs.
Okay, so starting with the Quicksilver formula, the glutathione formula, which is sounds like that's the starting point, the ABCs of what we're talking about doing to strengthen our bodies and provide a greater immunity, but through detox first. So if we have your product sitting in front of us, what do we do on the first day?
So what I would encourage, if you want a nice detoxification program, get the glutathione and then get the liver detox kit. It's just a 2-part kit. It's called Push Catch Liver Detox. One part is called liver sauce, real simple, and the other part is called Ultra Binder. That's the toxin binder. So on day 1, you take either 2 or 4 pumps of the glutathione, depending on what part in the sequence you start. Because the directions will have like for a sensitive person, start with this, half dosing, or for more robust, start with full dosing. So say you take 2 pumps of glutathione and you'll hold that in your mouth for 30 seconds to get absorption right through the oral cavity. And then you do a half teaspoon of the liver sauce. The liver sauce is, even though it says liver, it's going to work at a cellular level and a liver level to turn up the transferase enzymes that are going to link toxins onto the glutathione and turn up the transport enzymes that are going to move these toxin conjugates through the system down to the liver and out through the bile, including turning up bile flow. And then a half hour after you took those 2 products, then you're going to mix the binder with water and drink that down. Now, the binder is a mixture of charcoal, zeolite, a proprietary metal binding compound that we make called IMD that is specifically built to hold lots of heavy metals on it. And there's a couple other compounds in there for your gut lining. And so you'll take all those binders. In that first half hour, you'll be mobilizing toxins down to your liver, dumping them out with the bile, and in about a half hour, they're ready to be collected by the binder. Now, this is really important because you just fed every step in the chain going down there. And there are even other parts in the liver sauce to minimize how your body reacts immunologically to that movement of toxins. Some people can have kind of allergic reactions to that called histamine releases. And we even have parts in there to stabilize the histamine. They're called the mast cells that release the histamines. So you've got everything stabilized. You've got the toxins moving, conjugated or coupled to the bile flow, and then picked up in the GI tract. And in that, you dose, half hour later, you take your binder, half hour later, you're ready to eat, or if you're fasting, just go along with your life. And in that hour time, you had a complete cycle of mobilizing and then binding toxins. And as you go through this program, you'll do that first once a day, then twice a day, then double doses twice a day, then double doses 3 times a day as you move up this scale. Now, you don't have to go all the way to the top, but if you really want to let everything out of your body, you do that. And the beauty of this discrete cycling where you tie the whole system together is that you don't have loose ends in there, and you're not going through your day and going, oh, I feel kind of crappy, and oh, I got to stay by the toilet. And, what people associate with detox, they're like, oh, no, I need a week off before I can detox. This is a very stabilized yet profound detoxification system.
So if you just did the glutathione without the other steps, what would the result be?
So if you were doing glutathione, maybe you do it twice a day. Your body is going to be encouraged to detoxify, but it won't move it quite as fast. It will build its immune system. You'll build up some of these longevity aspects, and it'll just be a longer period. It's not like we're just pulling the plug on the toxins and draining them out real quick. But there's a lot of people who've gone with that long-term approach. Sometimes they'll do the glutathione and another product we have that's liposomal vitamin C with R-lipoic acid. And they'll do those over long periods of time. I just think it's a faster, more powerful approach to couple it to the liver detox.
If people who are very toxic do the liver detox, do you find from your feedback that they have a Herxheimer's reaction where they're, really feeling sick because they're, is it dramatic or is it gentle?
No, it's very stable, and that's because in the beginning, 10 years ago, we built these detox systems and we had to titrate up very, very slowly. And as we went, we got to understand the importance of getting the bile flow. Once you move the toxins from the cells to the blood, the liver has to take them and dump them out with the bile. And if it can't, it dumps them back into the blood. It'll build up as much as it can, and then it'll squirt it back into the blood because it doesn't have anywhere for it to go. And what'll come out into the blood are toxins and bile salts. And you'll get rashes, and you'll get itching, and you'll get brain fog. You might get lower back pain as your kidney tries to take up the slack there. But once we were able to get the bitter compounds into the liver sauce to get the bile flow coupled to the toxin flow, we stopped having these. Now, it needed one extra step, and that was the binder. And the binder we used to use was specific to mercury, and it was really good for that, but it wasn't really getting all the other toxins. And that's why we took that binder, IMD, the metal specific binder, and added charcoal, chitosan, zeolite, and acacia gum, because those bound the whole soup of toxins that were coming out of the body. And that was able to get a much more harmonious effect. Then we had a couple other add-ons if people were like, if they had a lot of anxiety, if they were really locked up into stress, then we added CBD or GABA to let down that system, because if you can't relax a little bit, that'll keep the liver from opening up. So these were the levers that we had to pull to get everything to work right. But the essential combination of the flow paths is the push catch liver detox. And then the cellular accelerator is the glutathione. And then again, if you have to come in with neurological stuff, you've got GABA and CBD.
Oh, that's so fascinating. Okay, so that's step one. Let's just say we've now covered detox and we're several weeks into this program. So in the meantime, are we doing anything else to start building the next building block of immunity?
Yeah, now we can go in and we can lower the total immunological load. Years ago, we thought, okay, there's nothing living in the body, and if something gets in there, we get sick. And then we started getting into, oh, wait a second, in our gut, there's more bacterial cells, there's more total microbiome cells by, 100-fold than there are cells in our whole body. And then we started getting into the gut microbiome and then its influence on the immune system. Then we started finding that there was stuff living all through our blood, and there's a whole biome there. And some of that can be pathologic, and it can be a drain on the total immune system. We started looking at jaw infections, nasal infections, places where there's just a lot of stuff living, and it's a drain on the immune system. So first we're talking about the toxic drain from all the metals and pesticides and herbicides and mold toxins we're exposed to. And so we talk about, here's our push catch liver detox, we're going to get that stuff out. But now maybe we want to lower the total microbial load now that's draining on us. And there we can take things like cat's claw. We have a nano-emulsified cat's claw that's good for clearing a lot of stuff out, and especially good for helping your immune system deal with viral infections. We have another product called Microbe Manager, which is more direct in its very strong microbial balancing function with some strong herbal extracts like artemisinin. You can make nasal sprays. You could do neti pots to clean either a strong saline to clean out areas in your sinuses. There's a lot of stuff that lives in our sinuses. And so saline is very good for washing that out. Or you can get, herbs that are antimicrobial and blend them with the saline and wash out that area. So that's a good way to go. There's approaches for lowering some of the bacterial overgrowth in the GI tract. And then, of course, there's probiotics and nourishing your microbiome. Now, when you're doing that push catch liver detox, that's detoxifying your GI tract as well as your liver and your cells. So we're going to be detoxifying there, but maybe we want to make sure that we have a good probiotic regimen going there. One of the probiotics that I like a lot and that will help your immune system are called spore-based probiotics. One of them is called Megaspore. There's also one called TerraFlora. And there's another, I just saw one in front of me that's, this is more of a bifido generating one called Bifido Maximus, made by my friend Grace Liu. So either the spore ones, the Megaspore, the TerraFlora, I'll often do those for a month at a time, and then I'll rotate and I'll do the Bifido Maximus. The Bifido Maximus has such a large amount of bacteria that a lot of them can make it through into the GI tract. The spores live through the acid, come alive in the GI, and then pass out. That's the interesting thing about spores, is they only live for a couple days and then they move out. But while they're there, what they're doing, they're not trying to take over. They're promoting proliferation of the good bacteria and of the complexity of your microbiome. And so that's the way that, the short answer to how I use probiotics.
Well, I'm so glad you brought up the probiotics, because our last podcast, we alluded to probiotics and said, okay, we need you to tell us which ones are the ones that are going to make a difference, because we do know that very often you can waste your money on probiotics. You can take them, think that you're doing good, but yet they never make it through the GI tract because of the acid, and they get destroyed. So how do we know that the three you just mentioned, Megaspore, TerraFlora, and Bifido Maximus, are going to get through our GI tract?
Yeah, well, the spore-based probiotics have a lot of data around them, and it's just the nature of the spores are very resilient. It's like a hard shell, and they get through the acid and they wake up in the upper GI. They live for a couple of days and then they move out. And I've seen, in fact, Kiran Krishnan, who is one of the owners of Microbiome Labs that does Megaspore, just lectured for our functional medicine group here last week. And I got a chance to see all of his data on changes to the microbiome while you're taking Megaspore. And one of the most important things is, and this goes right back to both immune and detoxification. What people get in their GI is called leaky gut, where the lining between the area between the cells in the gut loosens up and stuff comes through it. And what comes through it is this stuff called endotoxin. And they're parts of bacteria from the gut. They're not whole bacteria, but they're little parts of the membranes of the bacteria. And your immune system recognizes them as being a potential systemic infection and winds up very intense inflammatory activity. Now, when that winds up, it blocks all detoxification and consumes the activity of the immune system into a negative inflammatory response. So it's very important not to have this. And when you get a flush of this after eating, it's called postprandial endotoxemia. Prandial is a scientific word for eating. So postprandial is after eating, endotoxemia. That's endotoxin in the blood. And it has a lot of horrible effects, creating long-term chronic disease and blocking detoxification, consuming your antioxidant reservoirs and altering your immune system. And they showed that just 30 days on the spore probiotics was able to eliminate postprandial endotoxemia. And this was tests with college-age kids, and they had them eating real fatty, like fast food meals. And at the start, they had this big endotoxemia, but after just a month on the probiotics, they didn't have that strong endotoxic response. So there was a lot of data proving out the effects that these have on the GI tract.
So those three products, let's just take the three you mentioned. are they, can we order them on Amazon, or how do we buy them?
Well, that is a good question. And I think we're just going to cheat here and look up Megaspore. Yes, you can buy that. You can buy Megaspore online, including on Amazon. I think you can buy directly from the company as well.
So it's called
Megaspore is the one that I've seen the most data on, and I know how it works, and it's a very good one. The Terraflora I like. I'm sure you can find it out there somewhere. It has less potency of spores, but it has it has prebiotics in the form of mushroom extracts, and that's available on Amazon as well.
Okay.
Bifido Maximus, I don't see on Amazon.
But that's your friend.
Yeah, Grace Liu, she is out of, you can buy it online. You can find it. There's a couple of sites that have it. It is a very potent one, and it's a powder. You can do a quarter teaspoon has 100 billion CFU, and so you could do a teaspoon of that and get a really, really, really high dose. Yeah, I see it now online at Calm Glow Functional Medicine. There's a couple places that have it. I've used this one more when I have acute, if I'm traveling and I get some sort of GI disruption, I'll take that and it'll calm the system really well. One of the things with these, the acidophilus and the bifidus, is that they don't necessarily have to be totally alive to have, like, even if the acid has killed them, the chemical structure of their membranes is part of how it has an immunomodulating effect on the GI tract. And I've seen some of the overage. A lot of the probiotics that you buy out there, they say they have 100 billion, but there's only, 20 billion still in there. And I've seen Grace's data. She has a very, very high overage. There's several fold the claimed amount on there. So this I have I have experience using all of these. I haven't seen the data on the outcomes with this, but I've seen the outcome with myself, and I know it works exceptionally well. Grace Liu's name affectionately is the Gut Goddess. This is all she does for a living, is deal with people's GI issues and build probiotics around them. So
if we wanted to start out with the Megaspore, let's just say, with the Megaspore, and then if we have a special need, like we know we're going to, well, let's say post COVID-19, we're going to travel again. Or some other reason that says, okay, I have a special need, my stomach needs this, then you would go to that's
the Bifido Maximus.
Okay, I'm so happy we covered that. Okay, let's move on to the next phase. So now we're at we talked last time about immunity, and I think we have a lot of data from you, information from you on that. Talk to us now, because of COVID-19, there is so much stress and so many hormone disruptors right now. Could you spend a bit of time just to tell us, how do we manage the superhighway of our hormones and our stress levels, which of course right now cortisol is at the top of our mind, because everybody, I don't know too many people that are not feeling stressed. So let's focus on that.
It's a really big deal. The two compounds that we use the most for stress control are GABA and CBD. And so we do GABA, because it's water soluble, goes in what's called a liposome, and we have a GABA L-theanine sublingual. And in the first couple of weeks of COVID, I was taking that all day long. I'd usually only take it for sleep. And it was really good. And, I saw my blood pressure was up a little bit, and it really calmed that down, because I was trying to manage my whole staff and my home and all these things. And the other one that I use a lot of is CBD, and we use a nanoemulsion of CBD. And we have our full spectrum CBD, which has CBD with a little bit of naturally occurring THC. And that's a little bit more powerful than the broad spectrum. If somebody says broad spectrum, we remove all the THC so that nobody will test positive on a drug test if, say they're police or firemen or airline pilots. And so they use the broad spectrum. Then we have one called CBD Synergies AX, which combines the broad spectrum with GABA and with some herbal compounds, passion flower, and chamomile and skullcap, for calming down getting a really high level of settling down the system. So you'll see, if you go to the Quicksilver Scientific webpage, the different things we have in the calming that are blends of GABA, CBD, and everywhere in between. And so you can use those to settle things down. But then on a hormone level, especially women, you need to balance estrogen and progesterone. And first, let me say that the biggest balancer in your body of all of your hormones is the liver. So while we're working on liver detox, we're helping our body get better at regulating our hormones. We're also detoxifying excesses of estrogen and estrogen metabolites, and we're making sure that the estrogen detox pathways are down non-carcinogenic pathways. Estrogen detoxification can make some very carcinogenic byproducts, but you can control those pathways so that they're more beneficial. But I encourage, especially women who are getting into their late 40s and 50s, where they're going to start looking at bioidentical hormones, or if they know that they're estrogen dominant. Estrogen dominance makes you more tended towards fight or flight. You are much more likely to have a fight or flight response because it stimulates a neurotransmitter called glutamate. And glutamate, when it gets in excess, creates anxiety and brain fog. And certain toxins also go to the glutamate receptors and make them hyperfire. This includes mercury. This is why mercury creates anxiety. It's one of the biggest symptoms of mercury toxicity is anxiety. Now, women will find that their mercury symptoms get much worse as they go into menopause, because progesterone is the antidote to estrogen, and they start becoming more estrogen dominant as progesterone goes down, and they start getting more of these anxiety symptoms. So estrogen is creating glutamate, but progesterone works on GABA receptors and makes GABA receptors more active. And that's why progesterone is very calming. It leads to sleep and it blocks anxiety. So going into a good hormone doctor, getting your hormones measured, and for a woman, this really will mean measuring your hormones at several parts of the month. If you're still cycling, you want to go through and looking at that, because the progesterone expresses itself in the second half. If you're not cycling, you're just going to choose a happy medium you want to run at, or you're going to create an artificial cycle where you bring up the progesterone, maybe a low level for half the month and a high level for half the month. But progesterone doesn't just work on GABA receptors, it opens up the liver as well. So there's this feedback between the liver controlling the hormones and the hormones controlling the liver. But you have to go and you have to look at those levels. For guys, it's really important too. Especially one of the problems that guys get into is they start supplementing testosterone, and then because of things they're exposed to, whether it's molds or plastics, they have there's an epidemic of this. It's an upregulation of aromatase, which is the enzyme that turns testosterone into estrogen. So at first they'll feel better from testosterone, then they'll start getting fatter, they'll get a belly, they might have gynecomastia, their energy goes down, they got erectile stuff, and so they take more testosterone, but it doesn't help because their estrogen's gone high, and that's going to lead to irritability, it's going to block liver. And so it's really important that we tune it, we know where our hormones are, and we work with a good hormone person to tune those in.
You know, it's so interesting what you're talking about, because one of the last things that you ever hear about with allopathic doctors is a question of how are your hormones about being balanced, and they never really focus on that. I guess in medical school it's like nutrition, which is going to be our next subject here. But in medical school they don't even have courses on nutrition for doctors.
It's probably just because there's no prescription drugs around it. Well, there was Axiron and the other rub-on testosterone, but they were never taught how to look at everything and do them all together. The real good hormone work doesn't come from prescriptions at your Walgreens. It comes from compounding pharmacies.
That's right.
Make blends of different testosterone forms. You'll have creams. You can get a specific estrogen to testosterone ratio for women, specific progesterone ratios, and someone helps you dial those things in. I mean, it is just profound what happens when you dial those things in. You know I had an episode a while ago where I wasn't controlling the estrogen formation out of the testosterone. And I don't know what wound up my aromatase, but all of a sudden I started building up high estrogen and it gave me high blood pressure. And there was other it's just nothing was really working right. And then all of a sudden I saw the levels. I usually had monitored them, but something had changed in my routine and I wasn't sending my samples in as steadily. And then all I did was, bring that estrogen down and the high blood pressure went away. Everything just went right back into place. I mean, it's just profound. The hormone is such a profoundly powerful regulator of the whole system. And so it cannot be ignored in our quest to be as optimum as we want to be.
So I think what we need to tell our viewers is when you go to your doctor, if he doesn't ask you about your endocrine system, you need to ask him or her to please test my hormones. And believe me, I have asked so many of my friends who go to doctors like that, and I say, have you asked them to test your hormones? Because the normal blood work does not get into the hormones. It does not test that. And now today it's more and more difficult to get insurance coverage, so the doctors are actually getting frustrated and they're not testing as many of the modalities of the body because they're afraid that their patient doesn't want to pay for it out of pocket and insurance isn't covering it. So now they're just doing the very basic stuff. So all I can tell you is, for my viewers, is have your hormones tested, because they are the superhighway, as Dr. Shade has just said to us. And there's so many fine-tuning elements of that affect all the other systems of the body. So
you're going to have to find somebody who can do that. And usually, you might have a primary care guy who, takes care of certain things, but you might end up with somebody totally different just for the hormones. And these people are trained usually at A4M or AMMG. Those are the two groups that focus on this. They'll have some sort of fellowship from there where they'll get the training, and they'll talk about being functional endocrinologists or something like that. And so you'll shop around, but there's plenty of people that are trained in doing that. And if they're not trained in it, don't bother with them.
Right. And A4M, for those who don't know, it's the American Academy of Anti-Aging. And it started many years ago by Dr. Goldman and Dr. Klatz. And they were, just sitting in a hotel room, so to speak, and had an idea. And now it's, I don't know how many 7,000 or 8,000 doctors worldwide. And they were sold to Targa, but they have conferences all year long. And actually lay people like you and me can go to those conferences as long as you are a member. They will let you come, and it's quite amazing what you learn by sitting in those lectures. And then of course they have a floor where they sell products in the hotels where they're sponsoring, so you can
I lecture there routinely, and we have booths there, and
right.
So that's been a big part, because they need to know not just how to dose the hormones, but how do you do detoxification? How do you keep the terrain clean? How do you keep care of the immune system? This
right.
is all, how you build a healthy health and longevity.
Right. So I think because we're going to run out of time, Dr. Shade, I want you to just spend a moment to tell us how can we, with a very basic program to start, how can we utilize the Quicksilver Scientific product line without overwhelming us? Because, as we start to move into we'll start with grade school, and then we'll move into getting our PhD, so to speak. But people want to start with something that's going to be easy for them to use. And also, I know you're offering with the Ageless code. By the way, that code is Ageless 2020 for any of my viewers. And when you order Quicksilver products, you'll get a 20% discount, compliments of the generosity of Dr. Shade. And I highly recommend that you look at the Quicksilver Scientific website. But right now, if you could just give us the simplest program for people to start out, just so they have the way to start making a difference.
Yeah. So if we're talking in detoxification, the core product is this push catch liver detox, and you can start with just doing it for a month and see how that goes for you. You can even start with the 10-day program, and then I like people to add on to that glutathione. And if you have more neurologic, like you're feeling tense, then add on CBD or GABA. There's instructions on how to dose all that, and just give it that shot. Run that program for a month, and you are sure to feel better, lighter, more energy, less anxiety, better sleep. Everybody comes through that doing well. And if that's doing well for you, go in for another month at a higher dose, and just, dislodge a little bit more and get a little bit more clarity.
But I think today with COVID-19, the detox, of course, as we've talked about, is the starting point. However, everyone is concerned about their immunity. So if we're going to be, cleaning out our system, as we said at the beginning of this discussion, and we're ready to absorb more of the supplements that will help to build immunity, such as the vitamin C. You mentioned vitamin C with our lipoic, which is one. I know you have a new product that is not being offered on the 20% because it's brand new, but it is the kind of the Cadillac right now. It's vitamin C, liposomal vitamin C with elderberry.
Yeah.
So those of you who are looking for that next level, you could start with the vitamin C liposomal with our lipoic. And then if you want to go to graduate school, you can go to the next level.
If you were going to do the push catch detox, that's already got lipoic on it. Then I would go for the C with elderberry as your one-stop immune boost, along with doing the push catch and glutathione for the detoxification.
Yeah, because I saw an article the other day that said for immunity, strengthening immunity, cat's claw, which you mentioned earlier that you offer, Echinacea purpura liquid, to take that, under the tongue or in a tea. And what was the third one? Oh, saw palmetto. So I don't know if you have thought about those, but they
well,
say those
you know,
three together.
there's 100 things you can put out there, you know, and you want
Okay.
me to keep it simple. And,
Yeah.
and you know, echinacea is a good one. You know, cat's claw. I do a lot of cat's claw. That's more when I'm trying to get the body to rebound against some of the chronic fatiguey type of stuff.
Okay.
But you know, there's a lot of different ones you can use. Actually, at the end of this month, we have a shot called Immune Charge coming out. That's C, elderberry, D, A, K, and E. That is a complete immune package, all in one shot. And you can use that for a couple of days to build up your immunity, and then just a couple of weeks, you know, maybe before you travel, or if you're going, you know, as we start getting away from the lockdown, you're going to go into some public place. Maybe you're going to do some before a.
Okay, so can you do that? Can you do that under the tongue?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. Well, that's a wonderful.
That's an awesome
tip.
one. That's what we've all been taking here through this whole thing.
Right.
And we kept everybody healthy in our company. Half of the company was working off site, the other half was on site doing operations, and we didn't have any outbreak.
Perfect. Well, we have run out of time, as we always do when we talk to you. But we had, I think, so much content today, so people have a lot to absorb. And I thank you again, Dr. Shade, for sharing your views with us and helping us to stay healthy. This is so important right now. Like I said last time, if we don't take responsibility for our own health, no one else is going to do it. So information is knowledge and power. And that is what we're trying to do for our viewers right now on Ageless and Timeless. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again.
Thank you, Michelle.
Stay safe and stay healthy. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Shade has been here twice now, as I said, and he's shared a lot of information. And now it's up to you, our viewers, to decide what you want to do for your own program. I can tell you that I have used the Quicksilver Scientific products, and I get them from both Quicksilver Scientific and from Water and Wellness, which is one of my sponsors. So they distribute the Quicksilver Scientific products. So you can go to either place and either website and order, and both of the companies will give you the 20% discount if you mention the Ageless code. So Ageless 2020 with Quicksilver Scientific, and just Ageless with Water and Wellness, and you will have the products that I think will be the building blocks for good health. And I want you all to stay safe and stay healthy. And I wish you a beautiful day. This is Michelle Hughes signing off for Ageless and Timeless. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. Bye-bye.
My love for you is immeasurable. My respect for you immense. You're ageless, timeless, lace and fineness, your beauty